What is going on, everybody? Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and whatever time it is, and welcome back to another video with you, man, Immersioholic. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my Rise of the Julia campaign for Total War Rome 2 Divided Impera, episode 10. Before we jump into today's episode, I just want to thank you all for your support so far in the series. I do this purely as a hobby. I never expect anybody to watch it, let alone get anything out of doing these videos, besides sharing my story. And that's one of the main reasons why I started creating Total War videos, is because each and every single campaign has a different story to tell, and I just want to share my story with you guys, and hopefully people enjoy it. And it seems like a fair few of you have, which is awesome. I really appreciate it, every little single comment, like, whatever. It's just really exciting and really nice to see that people care about this game in the same way that I do, or at least in a similar way. So thank you all for joining me so far anyway. Now, actually getting into the episode today, we're going to start by looking at the enemy army remnants that wiped out the 2nd Legion. If you'll remember, in our last episode we lost Lucius the Great, commander of the 2nd Legion. And this was a massive defeat. This is the first major defeat Rome has suffered through in this campaign. Lucius was heir to the Julia family, but the hope of Rome did not die with him. While it did seem rather grim at the end of the last episode, it's actually not too bad, because the 2nd Legion inflicted massive casualties on the enemy army, and because of that, they're actually not going to take advantage of the situation and invade Italy. Instead, they're going to be sitting around for a little, trying to recover from their losses. So while they're doing that, I'm going to form the 3rd Legion here with Quintus Aemilius Pappus, I believe. He is the leader of the Junia faction, or family, which is our main rival faction in Rome. But right now, Rome is in a state of emergency. We do not have time to bicker amongst ourselves about who's going to command what army. And he's a decent commander, so we may as well pick him. Why not? He's going to be recruiting a bunch of Roman-based troops. We're going to be doing the same sort of recipe with that army, but the more and more I begin to recruit troops, the more and more I want to Romanize them, because we're nearly at the point where we're actually going to be receiving a reform for our military, which will convert our Hastatian Principes and Velites into I believe it's Polybian troops is how they describe the reform, the Polybian reforms. Basically, it makes them really, really good and stops them from using spears. Wow, I apologize, can't talk today, guys. Wow. All of our guys begin using swords, essentially. They get better armor, they get more discipline, better training, and so when these reforms hit, we're going to want as many Roman troops in our armies as possible. Anyway, while that's happening, we're going down to south towards Sicily, where we're engaging Carthage in the First Punic War. Carthage has begun to militarize the island. I did say in the last episode that I probably should have already attacked, but I chose not to because of our internal instability in southern Italy, which is still a major problem, by the way. As soon as I move the 1st Legion out of southern Italy, it's going to be on the brink of rebellion, but it doesn't matter, because right now I need to start striking back. We can't keep going along in this sort of war of attrition where we're just going to keep losing men. So in the north and in the south, I'm going to be swinging out and throwing some punches back at the enemy. Here you can see just how dire our situation is in the south. But as you saw me go into the faction panel just before, I'm actually going to be doing that so I can organize some games and feasts in southern Italy, so the people are going to be fairly happy just for the next few turns. So I have enough time to send out the 1st Legion, take on this first enemy army, and hopefully invade Sicily proper. And I shall see you guys on the battle map. Alrighty, here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Another invasion of Sicily has begun, but this one probably is going to turn out to be a little bit more permanent. Anyway, since the Carthaginian army was established inside of a fort, I wasn't sure how they were going to handle me attacking them, especially since I had the slight missile superiority with my javelin men. So I just basically formed up like this was going to be a regular field battle, with all of my troops formed up in one single line. We have the axemen at the front, Hastati on the flanks, Principes in the second line, and then on the far flanks I have my cavalry and levies, who I'm going to be using more and more as like a combination of a little 1-2 punch against the enemy cavalry. Levies and your own cavalry can be an extremely effective combination if you micro them right. A lot of the times you can mess that up though. And it was a good thing I formed up in one big solid formation, because the enemy army actually does come out and attack us. I wasn't sure if they were going to. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. Just depends on what culture you're fighting and the army compositions mainly. But because they were coming out of the fort, I wanted to push my army forward very fast so they don't have enough time to form up. And that is exactly what happens. The enemy ends up just charging straight into us in the center. So we're going to do a little bit of a Hannibal tactic, and while we crush the enemy's cavalry on the flanks, we're going to be engaging them in the center, and we're going to let them maybe even gain a little bit of ground. It's not really about that. The main thing it's about is engaging them in the center, and then on the right and the left flanks, we're going to be wrapping them up with our axemen and eventually our Hastatis and Principes at the same time. The enemy cavalry does get a bit annoying. You see here on the left I micromanaged a little, but all in all this battle is going to be pretty straightforward and there's not going to be too much to show you guys. I just felt like it was worth showing this tactic to you guys. We do have another battle coming up where I'm going to be doing something similar in trying to engage the army before they have enough time to form up, and it is a thing I recommend you do in your own battles as often as you can. As long as you can take the enemy unprepared, then chances are you're going to have the advantage, and here you're going to see it very, very quickly. It's basically turning into a bit of a U-shape, where our battle line is turning into a U-shape around the enemy, and it's just wrapping them up so quickly. You can see them scrambling to try and get out on the left and right, and a few of the units are just going to run straight back at it, back the way they came from. But instead of getting out and forming up a proper line, we're just moving way too fast for them, especially with my axemen. If you're going to outflank the enemy and you need to do it quickly, try and do it with light infantry like these axemen, the Syracuse axemen. Excellent unit, one of the most useful units in the Roman early game, no matter what mod you're playing. Well, actually I don't think they're part of vanilla. So, Divided Impera players, pay attention. If you're struggling in the Roman early game, which most people probably aren't, but if you are, Syracuse axemen are where it's at least until you hit the first reform. But besides that, there isn't a lot to say. The cavalry got dealt with, my levies were more than useful, and then the enemy army just started routing one piece at a time. I used my levies and cavalry to run down the enemy, and then that was pretty much that. I try to get a few close-ups in. I'm going to be trying to improve that moving forward. I am now no longer using the battle replay system to record battles, so hopefully you guys could still enjoy a nice little view of fighting and whatnot. I'm going to be trying to do the best I can anyway. But these units, they look fantastic. I believe I'm playing on the highest unit detail there is, I'm not too sure, but either way the Divided Imperial units look absolutely fantastic. Now before the battle ends, I am going to show you guys something where quite often you'll surround an enemy army, and we're going to see this a lot fighting Carthage, and their entire army will rout except one pesky annoying unit, and it's usually a hoplite unit. I'm not too sure what the deal is. I believe I saw it on the Total War Center forums, where one of the mod developers for DEI said that if you surround certain enemy units, they will have this invisible sort of effect, where they think that they can't retreat almost no matter what. So the best thing to do is give them a route to run into, and then hit them with cavalry just like we've done, and then that will win you the battle. And there we have it, another decisive victory. We didn't take many casualties at all, and we inflicted massive casualties. The enemy army is almost entirely wiped out, which is excellent. We are going to run them down here in a second. Thankfully they didn't get too close to the city of Syracuse, so we won't have to fight the garrison at the same time. And I'm not looking to take Syracuse right now. I did say I want to invade Sicily, but I want to attack Panormus to the northwest and I believe Acragas to the southwest. We want to attack those, and to be honest, I was debating whether I wanted to liberate them or not, but I feel like liberating them is probably the smartest move at this time, as it is so hard with all of my submods to take a town and hold it. One of the biggest things that you have to deal with when you do take territory is handling the massive cultural unrest, which is insane, and we will see it going forward in future videos. Here I am going to fight the battle manually, but I'm not going to show you guys. Very standard, straightforward surround on the enemy. We surrounded them, obliterated them, and they were a garrison, so it's nothing exciting at all. I did debate sacking the town, but it just wasn't worth risking the Carthaginians sending another army. You have to keep in mind, Africa is so close to Sicily, and Carthage has such a vast naval advantage that they can land any number of armies at any one time on the island and hit us within a turn. So to try and take as few risks as possible, I just liberate instantly, and I'm going to withdraw the 1st Legion back to south of Italy. Panormus is very grateful for us liberating them. They joined the war against Carthage, gave me a bunch of money and a trade agreement, so it's almost as if I sacked the settlement. We do get a lot of benefits. One thing that we're going to see here in a second is that Panormus is constantly, almost every single turn, for whatever reason, going to become a client state of Carthage. And then every single turn, I'm going to demand that they stop it and declare war on Carthage. And most of the turns they do declare war, towards the end, after I did it like 5 times or something, they started to ask for money and all of that. But anyway, moving forward, up here in the north, the 3rd Legion is now ready to invade, and that's what we're going to do straight away. I know it might seem a little strange to send one army against basically 2 stacks or 1.5, but the enemy army that defeated the 2nd Legion hasn't fully recuperated, and so I'm going to try and use that to my advantage. Hopefully, because their units are much lower in manpower than they would be if they were full, hopefully they will rout easier. I'm not too sure if they will, but it is worth the risk in my opinion. So what I'm going to do is siege a city with the 3rd Legion, and we're going to wait for the enemy to attack us, because there's no way that they would not attack us. It's just too juicy of an opportunity for them, and they do attack us with a 3rd army, but it's not really an army, it's just an enemy general and his cavalry unit. And so now this is a big battle that could end the Northern War. Let's jump on into it. And here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I did say this could end the Northern War, and you need to keep that in mind during this battle, because this battle is so important. I really can't stress that enough. And it's kind of why, it's mainly the main reason that I took the massive risk of sending the 3rd Legion forward. I know it's a fresh legion, they don't have any veterancy at all, but the enemy is definitely recovering from the wounds of the fights against the 2nd Legion and our previous battles. So if we can take out this army and the garrison and take their capital, that would be excellent, and that would almost certainly end the war, at least in theory. The battlefield is pretty bad for us. It's half forest, half open field. I'm actually going to deploy on the left-hand side. I was expecting the enemy main army to come from the left. I just wasn't sure where, so I'm going to send out my general to scout a little. My axemen are going to be at the front, trying to stay inside the tree line to avoid the enemy archers and cavalry, and my Hastarian Principes will be coming up behind them. Within a few moments, we do see the enemy army coming out of the edge of the map on the left-hand side. They are coming all out at once, which kind of sucked. For whatever reason, I guess because I've played a little bit of Total War Attila recently, I expected the enemy army to be coming out of the edge of the map very, very slowly, but instead it's one massive blob that is going to swarm our axemen. The axemen are too far ahead of the main line, and so they're going to be isolated while the rest of the army tries to catch up. This is not looking good for the axemen. I do rotate my general around to the right-hand side to try and deal with the enemy cavalry, but so far this is looking like a terrible start to a very vital battle that we need to win. If we lose this, things are going to be even more desperate than they were before when we lost the 2nd Legion. You can see the enemy does what Gauls do best, and that is swarm our troops. My general is going to be charging on the right. My axemen do get all of the javelins off, but they're not going to get solid charges onto the enemy. Only 1 or 2 of my units even got attack commands before they were engaged, which is bad. My axemen are going to get absolutely hammered in this first engagement. but my Hastati are double timing it. They're catching up slowly. On the right hand side, the enemy general that was isolated on its own is coming in to hit us, so I'm going to try and isolate him. I do turn off the foliage here, by the way. I just kept this in the video so you guys can see how to do it if you want to do it in your own battles. It was a feature added in, I believe, in the last major patch for the game, or the patch before that. Some of you guys may or may not know about it, but anyway, I do recommend using it, especially in battles like this, so you can actually see what you're doing. The enemy is outflanking us immediately on the right hand side. Like I said, enemy's cavalry in general are coming at us on the left hand side. Their light infantry and a couple units of cavalry are coming at us. This is really a rough start to the battle. This is not how I planned this to go at all. You'll see pretty quickly on the bottom, if you look at the Axeman unit cards, the number balance for those units is just plummeting very, very quickly. The enemy's hitting them with skirmishers, javelins, archers, you name it, they are bombarding my axemen. So my Hastati and Principes need to get involved. I split up my levies to the left and right hand side, just like the last battle, to try and nail the enemy's cavalry. And it does work. On the right hand side it was a little bit slow, but it did end up working eventually. The left hand side it worked, but the enemy's cavalry kept on retreating back and forward because they were skirmisher cav. We're about to lose an axeman on the left hand side there. Not a lot I can do about that, and the axemen just need to hold for as long as they can while my lighter infantry get around. My Samnites and levies on the right hand side are outflanking, and on the left I get my general involved to try and counter the enemy's cavalry charge into my light infantry. I even send in a Principe unit to try and hurry up the process, because the longer that this battle goes on, the more of a chance we have that we're going to lose. We have to outflank the enemy. We have to get them to rout. We can't just kill them because they have far more troops than us, and a lot of their troops are really good at dealing damage, as in swordsmen, axemen, all of that. Whereas my main battle line is just spearmen, and spearmen do not kill units very quickly. My general is getting involved over there. As you can see, the enemy does have some archers behind it, so I'm going to have to get him to chase them very quickly, very soon. But it's starting to slowly turn around. The enemy's main line actually isn't making as much progress as you would think. Despite the axemen getting hammered, and one of them even already routing, my Hastati and Principes are there now to back them up, to not leave them alone and leave them behind. My levies are getting in some solid javelin throws. They're going to get a lot of kills very, very quickly. And on the left-hand side, my general finally breaks through the enemy's cavalry. I'm going to have him and my light infantry chase down the enemy skirmishers. If I didn't do that, we could have had some massive kills against us, essentially. The enemy was in a very good position to nail a lot of our troops, but because I was chasing them, they're not going to get a chance to throw their javelins and whatnot. Keep in mind, in the last video, that's exactly how we lost our major battle and how we lost Lucius and the entire 2nd Legion. One unit of archers came in and just ruined everything. So now I'm very paranoid about that moving forward. Within a few moments though, the battle is almost looking like it's ours. The main battle line of the enemy is wavering. My troops are now getting rear charges. The enemy skirmishers are in complete disarray. They're running all over the place. This is basically turning into a complete slogfest, a complete slaughter. It's just very chaotic and very hectic. It's Roman on Gaul, and it is true chaos right now. So many troops are running, so many are fighting. It must be a absolute sight to behold down on the ground, but unfortunately I didn't get many close-ups because this battle was very, very hectic for me to handle, controlling the army and whatnot. But in saying that, it does look like we're going to get in a solid win, as we did something very similar to the last episode, and that is crush the enemy flanks and then wrap up as soon as possible. Now I know that's kind of a standard thing to do in Total War. You always want to outflank the enemy. There's never a reason to not outflank the enemy, usually. But here, just the way we did it, how we had our center engaged very, very quickly, and our center line wasn't very long. It's not like we were longer than the enemy army and we outflanked them in that fashion, which is the most common way. Instead, we just engaged them very, very quickly before they had a chance to form up their main battle line. So that's something I want to get across here. Here we're seeing mass routs, absolute mass routs. The enemy army is all but broken. I barely have enough time to get all my troops to continue outflanking and engaging before the enemy troops rout. It's happening that quickly. You can see the open fields outside of the forest absolutely full of enemy units in a full-blown rout, which is awesome, and we're going to be running them down as usual with my cavalry, which is my general in this army, and all of our light infantry, my Samnites and my levies. Samnites actually did very, very well, and we didn't lose many of them. They were a really excellent outflanking force, so I'd recommend you try using those in addition to the Teriski Axemen. And right there is the nail in the coffin. The enemy general dies. There are 2 enemy generals, but the second one does die in just a few more moments, and that is that. The battle is over. We don't have the enemy capital though, even though we wiped out most of these troops. Because it was a sally out, whatever troops did survive and managed to make it off the battlefield, they're going to retreat back into the city. But either way, the city is open for Roman plundering. Alrighty, and there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. A close victory, but I feel like it was a little bit more decisive. But perhaps not. We did lose a fair few troops. Nothing too crazy. It is around 1,000 men, but most of those were our axemen and a couple isolated units, like 1 unit of Hastati, 1 unit of Principes. All in all, it wasn't bad at all. The main thing that is bad about the battle, though, is that the enemy archers almost entirely managed to escape, almost all of them. So that's going to be a pain in the butt moving forward and trying to take the town. I did, on the very next turn though, attack the town. We did have a few ladders and whatnot built up. We had more than enough. But the order resolve was looking a little too savage, so I did fight this manually. However, I'm not going to bother showing you guys. It was actually a very long battle, and it was a very, very frustrating one. I basically got into the walls of the city as soon as possible, very, very quickly, and then the enemy archers just continued to kite my troops around the entire city while we basically waited for the victory point counter to hit all the way to 0. So it was very annoying. That's why we lost our 2 Samnite units. That, and they got stuck in the gates as they were retreating. But all in all, it doesn't matter too much because the Insubres had just lost their capital. I do know they have 1 more town to the north. I believe it's their last, and this is looking like a massive victory for us. I did debate for a minute if I wanted to sack or liberate or what I was going to do, but I just ended up liberating the faction. We need allies, and we need buffer zones between us and the encroaching Gauls and Germans coming in from the north and the northeast, and the Thracians coming in from the east as well. The Adrician Kingdom and those other Thracians are going to be a big pain in the butt moving forward. Well, they have the potential to be at the very least. I'm going to withdraw the 3rd Legion back down south just to recuperate a little. I'm going to have to send them all the way to Rome though, because my other northern towns are starting to run out of manpower. So we need to go draw in from the main population, which should be fine, but it's just going to add on an extra turn or so. To the west over here, you can see Massalia is actually becoming almost a superpower in the western Mediterranean at least. They have a lot of coastal towns. They are Greek, so their troops are of excellent quality. Not Romans, of course, but still only just below Roman standards. So they're going to be a possible threat moving forward, or a very good ally. Here, the Insubres come for me, asking peace in the very, very next turn. I offer them client status. They reject it, so I absolutely reject any peace offering they give, for now. Back down here in the south, the Carthaginians are still militarizing Sicily. They did bring over another main army. This is a couple turns after that last battle, by the way. So I'm seeing a bunch of activity happening with their navies and this one full stack army. And because they sent the full stack army on transports, that is just too much of a juicy target for me to resist. So I'm actually going to send my small navy after them. Even though there's a very large chance I'll lose my navy, to me, wiping out a full stack of the enemy's Carthaginian army so the 1st Legion can move into Sicily and maybe take Syracuse, to me, that is worth it. I do have my spy down here who's helping us spot the enemy armies too, which is an absolute... it's an absolute must-have when you're conducting such an important war, you absolutely need your spies. Unfortunately, I can only afford to have the one at this time. There's the 3rd Legion going to Rome, just as I said. So far, not a lot has been done to the 3rd Legion to modernize it or anything. I'm just keeping it very standard. Like I said earlier, we do have the reforms coming in just around the corner, hopefully within the next episode or so. I am recruiting a little bit of cavalry, though. That is worth mentioning. But anyway, coming back down to the south, our 1st Navy is going to move in and wipe out the enemy army, hopefully. There isn't a lot to say about the naval battle, except that I fought it manually. I didn't trust the auto resolve. I recommend you never trust it in a situation like this, because the enemy army will escape, whereas if I fight it, good chance that I'm going to completely obliterate the enemy, which is exactly what happened. They lost every single unit, they did almost no damage to us, and we get an excellent win. I did capture 22 of the enemy, and for whatever reason it gave me like a massive reward for releasing the captives. Perhaps we captured some royal general or whatever, who cares. We get some good money, which we do need. We're struggling for money at the moment, and we will be for quite a while. Now that we've dealt with that threat, though, I am going to be sending the 1st Legion down south, but in order to do that, I need to secure southern Italy again. So, like I did earlier, I'm going to be organizing a feast that makes the people happy. There you can just see a little overview of my current Julia family. Gaius has 3 sons that are still alive. You can see Lucius on the right there, his adopted son who's now dead. He has 2 legitimate children and 1 bastard child who is the oldest, so that's going to be interesting moving forward. Be funny to see how that dynamic develops. But anyway, 1st Legion's coming on down. The enemy does have a full navy there, and you might be thinking it's a little strange that I'm attacking the city, but I was hoping that the enemy navy would get involved in the siege, and that is because once a navy gets involved in a land battle, chances are that they're going to land unless they have siege equipment, which this one didn't. So I was hoping they would land and I could wipe out a navy and take the city at the same time. It would be a tough battle, but I felt like I could do it. The second reason, though, for doing that is because I wanted my navy to survive and be able to pull back to Taurus before the enemy navy could engage us. However, it doesn't matter that the city is under siege. The navy can still move out, except the auto-resolve is actually in our favor, and because I know that if I fought this battle manually, I would lose, and I would lose badly, I chose to just take the auto-resolve hit and win the battle. The enemy navy loses most of their navy. We only lost a couple of ships. We did lose a lot of men, but men can be replaced, whereas ships can also be replaced, but not as easily. So Carthage definitely comes out worse off in that situation. We are going to be enslaving some of the units. And then here, I just wanted to show you guys again, Panormus and Carthage be negotiating peace. Panormus becomes a client state, and then I demand that they stop it again. I believe for this one, I actually had to pay Panormus to declare war again. Here you can see that Carthage does send in more troops into Sicily. They're going to be sending in more and more every single turn. I know that my time in siege in Syracuse is very limited. I have to take the city, and I have to take it quickly. So after just a couple turns, we are going to be engaging the siege here in a second. As you can see, I tried to get Panormus to keep joining the fight against Carthage. They weren't going to do anything. I know Panormus has very weak units, but the fact that they could be at war with Carthage is just a nice distraction for Carthage. That one I actually did get to pay them to join the war, which is nice. I believe it's the next time I do it that they don't accept it. Now is the time for the siege of Syracuse. This siege is so important. I really cannot stress that enough. If we win this, and we win this decisively, we take the largest foothold in Sicily and a major economic boost to our power, as well as a military one, because the city is very hard to take. So if we take it, we can hold on to at least this chunk of Sicily for quite a while. However, we're out of time for today's episode, so we're going to have to wait until next episode to see whether or not Gaius can take the city. Thank you all for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I shall see you in the next one.